if you're a fan of Liverpool or just a football fan in general, this image elicits a deep, deep emotion. For me as a Liverpool fan, sadness, despair, anxiety, possibly. And, if you're a supporter of a rival team, then maybe it's joy. But regardless, this image signifies Klopp's departure, his imminent departure, that is. And with him leaving at the end of the season, I figure there's no better time than to start looking forward as to how Liverpool might start to line up under new potential candidates who might take the helm at Anfield and replace Klopp. As always, if you're new to the channel, subscribe and give the video a like if you end up enjoying. Comment down below with your thoughts on who you would want to replace Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool and how you think they might line up. If you think there might be some transfers, if you think there might be some kind of specific inclusions to the squad here and there, feel free to sound off. But let's get right into it. And to preface, we have to kind of look at how Liverpool line up right now. The Arsenal defeat, there's a lot to it, but generally Liverpool does tend to line up in a 4-3-3. We're not going to necessarily look at the personnel right now because, some people are injured, some people are missing, but the key thing to understand here is usually Liverpool will line up under Klopp in a back four. Very rarely, I don't think ever, Klopp has played a back three or a back five. In the odd event that he may have once or twice, it's usually due to injury or suspension concerns. So it's not really typical to see Liverpool line up any other way than this. So for the first kind of lineup we have here, we're going to go with Roberto De Zerbi. He is somebody who has kind of been linked to Liverpool. He's someone who a lot of people have strong favor for and think would do a great job. Obviously, that kind of high energy, high octane style of football, a high line, pressing, playing out the back. It's all stuff that kind of coincides with Jurgen Klopp's philosophy. So this lineup isn't far too different than how Liverpool line up already, being that, you have this kind of standard back four and back five, really, that I feel like everyone that watches the Premier League or Liverpool in general will be accustomed to, Alisson, Robertson, Virgil van Dijk, Konate, and Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back. Obviously, Trent, will he, won't he invert is really the kind of key thing to this formation. I mean, with the way that De Zerbi likes to line up at Brighton, and to preface, De Zerbi is rather fluid. Sometimes he will have kind of like a back three and have his kind of fullbacks basically play a bit higher up. But, obviously Curtis Jones wouldn't be playing there. But to go through how the rest of the squad would kind of integrate to the back line and how this kind of continuity could benefit Liverpool, I think a key player under De Zerbi would obviously be Alexis McAllister. McAllister played under De Zerbi. He gave him a start. Well, he didn't give him a start in the Premier League, I don't think, but he really thrived under De Zerbi. He was fine under Potter, but he exploded under De Zerbi and clearly took a liking to him. And when playing in a 4-2-3-1, Roberto De Zerbi's sides usually line up in a double pivot. And for me, the most natural kind of answer for that Liverpool have at their disposal right now, based on the quality of player and just, the experience and everything, is probably McAllister and Jones in the double pivot. McAllister, I think, is a lock. Jones, I rate tremendously. The thing is, you might see a situation where instead of Curtis Jones or to rotate, or for one reason or another, you might have Wataru Endo start here. Or, as Bajcetic comes back, maybe Bajcetic also starts there. Because if you remember back to the days of McAllister and Caicedo playing at Brighton, you would want a kind of Caicedo-like profile of player. Jones, I think, does fit that, but I do like having Jones a bit further up in the pitch. But regardless, I think Jones would start there. In the middle, you'd have Dominic Soboslai working wonders as kind of like a bit of a attacking mid, a 10. He'd find some great spaces. Buonanotte usually will line up here for Brighton. Sometimes we've seen Joao Pedro kind of start through the middle behind Evan Ferguson. On the wings, traditional wingers more than likely. The Matoma role being given to Diaz makes a lot of sense. And Salah on the right. I mean, Salah's should be in almost any manager's plans, hoping that he stays on. But, it's a big question mark. I'm going to assume that Salah will stay at least another season. Fingers crossed. I know I'm not sounding very inspiring there, but up top, Darwin Nunez. And the way I see this, it just kind of feels like a very, business as usual. That makes sense. Not to say that it's going to be the exact same style of football or that De Zerbi is, in my eyes, even at the level of Klopp yet. But the way I do see it is these players would be very understanding of this system. They would kind of latch onto it very easily. And in a way, it might be the most compatible system. You might not have to really buy anyone. I feel like with this kind of lineup, you don't really need to buy people to cover. I mean, in the back line, you have Connor Bradley here, Kwanzaa, obviously a center back will be something that Liverpool will look forward to, but you still have Gomez there as a backup. At left back, Tsimikas, literally every position has some kind of depth at Liverpool to be able to play this style. It's a familiar style. It's a style that they can sink their teeth into as well and grow into even further. But there are some kind of different approaches as to how Liverpool could line up if, say, they go with somebody else who has been rumored to possibly take the helm at Anfield, Ruben Amorim. Ruben Amorim currently managing Sporting in the Liga Portugal, doing bits second place. And I mean, I think they won like 8 or 9-0 against some team in the league. Obviously, Portuguese league, some of those lower sides aren't necessarily the best, but still an impressive feat nonetheless. And as you can see, the first thing that should leap out at you, no back four. And honestly, Liverpool in a way will, in build up, sometimes have Virgil and Konate up here, Gomez kind of tucking up. It wouldn't necessarily be too much of an ask, I think, for Virgil and Konate to play as kind of two people in a back three. Neither would it be for Gomez, being that he's kind of played at left back and he can assume this role a bit more comfortably. Obviously, I think it would be a bit different because Gonçalo and Nazio usually will start here for Ruben Amorim. And the key difference being that Inacho's is a left-footed center back. Gomez is right-footed. I don't know how Gomez would slot in, but as of right now, with the personnel that Liverpool have, I would probably put Gomez there. All these positions, even in the De Zerbi side, totally subject to change. It could be a total whirlwind this summer. There's honestly no guarantee how Liverpool looks next year, period. You don't even know who will extend, who will get sold, who will be brought in beyond, the manager, just like the actual personnel. But being that Gomez has shown that he could play at left back, he could play at right back, he could play as a center back, I think he's probably the best choice there. And then Amorim likes to line up with a midfield four. Usually the midfielders are, a bit more kind of box to box, a bit more defensive. So McAllister and Jones, honestly, I feel like he might even want some more experience in the middle. No offense to Curtis. I'm going to put Endo there for now because he really does value having that defensive block here between the back line and the midfield. The midfield too, more specifically, the wide players, they'll get somewhat involved, but not nearly as involved defensively as the midfield too. The key thing with the back line is the fact that these players will oftentimes kind of interchange in build up and will play long balls. Inacio really at this position if we have, say, Virgil there, because he does play left center back for Liverpool, he could possibly accommodate this role, but you would be concerned with, him being beat on pace on the wings. He is getting older, but usually Virgil will play these kind of passes that, you'll have the ball here and you'll ping it all the way over the Salah on the right wing. Inacio will also kind of play passes, but as opposed to playing the pass, cross field towards Salah, he'll kind of progress with the ball using Virgil as Inacio here, and somebody will make a run, say Darwin or something, and he'll play the ball over top, kind of like a long ball this way with player running onto it, as opposed to going this way, kind of thing. So honestly, it's not too different to how Liverpool line up in the not line up, but build up with the kind of left center back. It is different in the direction and the momentum, and it is a bit more central. So question marks there. Out wide, I want to provide my justification for this. Trent, I feel like, will be in any manager's plans. He will probably have this right hand side, this wide right side to himself, at least in the midfield section. The next manager also uses wingers. So Trent, regardless, I think, he deserves this. He'll probably get this spot over just about anybody. And the reason I went with Jota, and the reason I have Salah out here as like kind of more true wingers, is that on the right, you'll have, in Sporting, you'll have Marcus Edwards, who is, he's a creator. He likes taking on players. He is a player who is a bit more kind of creative. You'll also have Goncalves over on the wide left side, but as opposed to kind of, playing the overlap, you'll kind of invert. And I feel like that could kind of benefit Jota. So in build up, maybe you could see stuff with, Diaz pushing forward, Darwin going forward, Jota dropping deeper, whole squad kind of just building up like that, Salah going forward. And Jota is this kind of focal point in between everybody. He could really kind of drop in and there could be some really funky stuff going on, because Diaz could then play the overlap and you could really just kind of progress the ball in a way that, if McAllister has it here, Jota drops deep, Diaz goes wide. Now Darwin, if he makes this run and Jota carries it, it becomes very kind of fortuitous, say, for Liverpool going forward. They could have just tons of options. Regardless, I think that this version of Liverpool, say, under Ruben Amorim, is one that I wouldn't necessarily dismiss. I wouldn't particularly be against something like this. Maybe Amorim feels like in his system, even with a back three, Robbo is the choice here, say, as opposed to Diaz. My thought process with Diaz is that the wide players don't necessarily make too much of a defensive contribution relative to other players in those positions, usually as like wing backs. So Trent would kind of be fine there in a sense, being that obviously, as a proper right back at Liverpool, him playing as kind of like a right mid, he would have even less defensive responsibility, but that would entail more defensive responsibility for both McAllister and Endo to kind of defend the defensive block shape, while Diaz and Trent kind of go forward. But the final manager, the final possible avenue for Liverpool in 24-25 and beyond that in the future is Xabi Alonso's Liverpool. So Xabi Alonso, Obviously, I've already said on my channel a few times, I want him above all else. I'll back any manager that comes into Liverpool, but I want Xabi. And Xabi also doesn't particularly like to line up with the back four. He lines up with a back three as well, similar but different to Ruben Amorim. So Xabi, he'll have his back three also with a left center back. Piero Hincapie usually plays there. He has experience playing as a left back. Gomez has experience playing as left back. Maybe somebody comes in there. Maybe Hincapie himself comes in. Who knows? But the at for the time being, same back three as Amorim's system. Won't delve too much on that. And Xabi will have his kind of wide players in the midfield be wingbacks. So in this scenario, to provide you with context for Leverkusen, as people know, you'll have Frimpong kind of play as a right winger. So say Trent's Frimpong, and you'll have Robertson or Grimaldo in this situation play it as more of a traditional wing back. So not necessarily as high and wide and kind of forward facing, I guess, going towards goal. But more just kind of like a traditional option as a wing back. But I think what would happen is the opposite of it, in the sense that as opposed to Trent being the player that's and I know this can sound weird with how, Trent's been a midfielder a bit more, and, the way that he's kind of grown into his role in this Liverpool 2.0 system under Jurgen Klopp. I don't think Trent's the player you want playing as the right winger, in the sense that while Trent could provide a lot, I think he is still better off controlling it centrally as opposed to, being kind of really high and wide. So my proposal in how I would expect it to look under Xabi would be Robertson pushing forward in the Frimpong role, more as kind of like a left winger. Obviously, Robertson's left-footed, but that would provide a lot of crossing opportunities for Nunez up top. But midfield two, McAllister, Jones. It's a similar philosophy in the sense that you want to kind of sixes or eights. Usually, Xabi will have a defensive mid more so. Currently, it's Andrich and Xhaka at Bayer Leverkusen. Two players who are far more defensively minded than McAllister and Jones. McAllister, I think, is growing week by week as a defensive unit at Liverpool and really helps kind of break up stuff in the midfield. I think Jones can too. And I think you could interchange a number of players in both Amorim's and Alonso's and De Zerbi's system to play in the kind of midfield two here, or in the double pivot in, say, De Zerbi's sake. But the difference with the front three for Xabi's Liverpool and how I would imagine it playing out is the wide players aren't necessarily wingers. They're kind of inverted creators. So they're like, so think of it this way. If you know Florian Wirtz, he'll kind of play as a left attacking mid, a bit more kind of, of a creative type. And Hoffman will also serve as the creator on the right. With Szoboszlai and Salah, if you have Nunez up top and you have Szoboszlai and Salah creating for Nunez, as well as, say, Robertson going forward, providing passing options, the midfield progressing along with, the rest of the side, Sabo going forward, Robbo going wide. Say it's something like this in the build-up at this point. And where's the ball? The ball's gone. The ball disappeared on me. Oh, I didn't have it on this one. One sec. So if, say, Allison plays it to Virgil, or say Gomez gets to McAllister, gets to Szoboszlai, at this point, with Salah being able to kind of drop, I guess, more centrally and play as not necessarily as much of a wide player, if the ball comes to Salah here and Sabo makes a run, Darwin's making this run here, the defense will kind of be in two worlds, in the sense that Salah will always be given the opportunity, I would imagine, being that, he's one of Liverpool's top goal scorers and such, to always kind of either decide to progress and play a pass or to take on the shot. Ergo, there will be a lot of situations where I think in this Xabi system, with how, the squad might line up, and obviously this is assuming no transfers, this is assuming no one gets sold, where, say the ball comes back to Trent, there's just going to be so many options constantly. I feel like the interchangeability of this squad could work a lot, in the sense that not in a kind of rotational, people kind of, say interchanging roles sense, but just with the current crop of players at Liverpool, I feel like you could, have somebody out wide like Robbo play in the kind of Jeremy Frimpong role on the left, and then say Trent gets rotated, as opposed to playing Connor Bradley as a true wing back. He could play as, basically the Frimpong role on the right, play as a right winger. And yeah, I feel like, I don't know, I just want Xabi really bad, and I want to hear what you guys have to think. It's kind of still surreal to think that Jurgen Klopp is leaving at the end of the season, but is a reality that we all have to face as Liverpool fans. So those are my thoughts on how I think Liverpool might line up under 3 potential managerial candidates for the 24-25 season. As always, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, like the video if you enjoyed, and comment down below, who do you want to replace Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool? Who do you think will replace him? And how do you think they're going to line up? Thank you so much for watching. I'm Sideline Sedo. Peace.